Welcome to The Explainer. Look, we're diving straight in today, because what we're unpacking is a literal industry-shaking paradigm shift. For half a century, the entire tech world just accepted one giant frozen assumption. Quantum computers absolutely had to live inside deep-freeze laboratories to work. It was basically treated as a permanent law of physics. Well, guess what? That assumption has officially been shattered.
Okay, let's look at the sheer massive contrast between the old guard and the new reality of quantum hardware. You know, the old quantum, you've definitely seen those PR photos. They look like giant, beautiful, gold-plated chandeliers. But what they don't show you is the small building's worth of specialized cooling equipment you need just to run the thing. But the new quantum, we're talking about a machine that operates entirely at room temperature and slots straight into a standard data center rack, just like your average server. And no, this isn't some 10-year theoretical roadmap anymore. These systems are literally shipping today. To really appreciate just how wild this leap is, we gotta remember the extreme constraints we're finally leaving behind. 15 millikelvin. That's a tiny fraction of a degree above absolute zero. It is, quite literally, colder than the empty vacuum of interstellar space. Traditional superconducting qubits absolutely demand these absurdly extreme conditions inside multi-million-dollar dilution refrigerators just to preserve their incredibly fragile quantum states. Just one stray vibration or a microscopic leak of heat, and boom, the calculation is instantly destroyed.
So, the million-dollar question, how exactly did we escape the freezer? The answer comes down to photonic quantum computing. Instead of using those supercooled circuits, this method encodes quantum information directly into particles of light, photons. And here's the brilliant plot twist. Photons naturally behave quantum mechanically at room temperature. They just do. By shifting to light, that massive, hugely expensive cryogenic bottleneck completely vanishes, and that entirely rewrites the commercial roadmap for this whole industry.
And when that cryogenic bottleneck disappears, the timeline accelerates ridiculously fast. Case in point, July 2026. A Netherlands-based company called Quix Quantum actually shipped a system named Carina. This was a historic moment, guys. Carina is an 8-input, 4-computational qubit machine. Now sure, that qubit count sounds small, but the real significance here is that this is a universal quantum computer running at standard room temperature. No months-long cool-down process, no physics department required to babysit the thing around the clock.
Which brings us to a super pivotal question. Why does escaping the lab actually matter? Well, it turns quantum computing from this elite research privilege, reserved for massive tech giants, into an ordinary enterprise purchasing decision for normal businesses. The timeline for practical adoption just hit warp speed. Oh, and real quick, if you want to stay ahead of massive technological shifts like this long before they hit the mainstream headlines, definitely hit like on this explainer and subscribe to the channel. We've got a lot more coming.
Now, what's really interesting here is how this shift to room temperature builds a totally new competitive landscape. Looking at the 4 major quantum modalities, you've got superconducting systems from Google and IBM still trapped in that 15 millikelvin fridge. Trapped ion systems from Quantinium, they rely on ultra-high vacuum chambers. Neutral atom tech uses these complex optical tweezers and lasers. But then you look at photonic systems from companies like Quix and PsiQuantum. They push the deployment advantage the furthest because they dodge both the dilution refrigerators and the complex vacuum chambers entirely. But honestly, the room temperature advantage, that's only half the story. The other half is mass manufacturing. Companies like PsiQuantum, QCI, and TuringQ are utilizing standard CMOS-compatible processes. Simply put, that means they're leveraging the exact same standard silicon foundries that already build our everyday computer chips. So these photonic quantum chips get to ride the exact same mass manufacturing cost curves that have made every other category of semiconductor progressively cheaper and way more reliable over time. It's huge.
And the sheer speed of this transition is absolutely staggering. We're seeing a rapid, intense convergence of global milestones. August 2025, Cubicin opens a factory in Shenzhen specifically to mass-produce room temperature units. The very next month, September 2025, PsiQuantum closes a massive $1 billion Series Z funding round. July 2026, Quix ships the Carina system to an actual customer. And looking ahead to 2027, PsiQuantum is targeting an audacious 1 million physical qubits system. This all proves we're witnessing a true phase transition for the industry. This is not just a random fluke.
You can also see this phase transition reflected directly in the capital markets. Just look at the astronomical funding flowing into these photonic architectures. PsiQuantum alone has raised upwards of $2 billion to date. TuringQ is sitting at $128 million, and Cuboson has over $100 million. This staggering amount of capital flowing in proves that investors are totally changing their tune. They're demanding measurable customer outcomes and deployable systems today, rather than settling for 10-year theoretical roadmap promises.
And this brilliantly illustrates that these aren't just speculative science fair projects meant to dazzle investors. We're talking active, real-world industrial applications right now. The National Cancer Center in Japan using it for oncology drug discovery. Airbus is applying it to incredibly complex aerospace fluid dynamics. QCI is leveraging it for AI, and TurnQ is even working on autonomous valet systems. These are real enterprises attaching real budgets to solve problems that our best classical supercomputers just fundamentally struggle with. Now you might be wondering, how does the physical infrastructure actually evolve to support all this? In the past, everyone assumed scaling quantum computers would require custom exotic networks, entirely new physical buildouts from scratch. But now, Cisco unveiled a room temperature quantum switch chip that acts basically as a universal adapter. This means these quantum computers can communicate over the exact same fiber optic cables that are already underground right now, carrying our daily internet traffic.
And because these infrastructure barriers are falling so incredibly fast, the stakes have escalated globally. Governments are now treating room temperature quantum computing as critical national infrastructure. You have the US government heavily backing PsiQuantum's utility-scale facilities in Chicago, while China is deeply subsidizing Cubison's mass production factory over in Shenzhen. Whoever can make these systems reliable and deployable at scale first, well, they're going to control a computational capability that'll reshape everything from material science to artificial intelligence.
Which brings us to a rather urgent consequence of this rapid deployment timeline. A practical, scalable quantum computer could theoretically break a huge chunk of the encryption protecting our global financial systems, our government communications, and our private data. Because room temperature architectures are rapidly accelerating the arrival of these machines, this just isn't a distant threat anymore. Companies like ID Quantique are already rushing to build quantum-safe security systems today, anticipating that these capabilities are getting closer than most people ever realized. However, we definitely need to maintain our engineering rigor here. While the infrastructure barrier has absolutely fallen, we can't ignore the remaining technical realities. Raw computational power is still trailing classical supercomputers. Remember, Carina currently operates with a pretty small qubit count. Plus, there are ongoing physics issues, right? Things like photon loss, the need for deterministic single photon generation, and, of course, the massive industry-wide challenge of scalable error correction. So, yeah, the freezer's gone, but the engineering mountain ahead, it's still pretty steep.
But you know, the core truth of this explainer is probably best summarized by Pete Shadbolt, the chief scientific officer over at PsiQuantum. He said, "The field is now going through a phase transition, where it is coming out of the research lab, people are starting to get serious about building large-scale, commercially useful machines." When an industry insider speaks like this on the record, it tells you everything you need to know. The era of quantum computing as a purely academic curiosity is officially closing. A new era of manufacturing rigor has begun. Okay, let's bring this all together with a final thought. The timeline for practical quantum computing just compressed significantly. That massive dilution refrigerator is no longer the absolute ceiling it used to be. So I'll leave you with this. If the infrastructure barrier is completely gone and a quantum computer can live right inside a standard data center, how will room temperature quantum reshape your specific industry? Take a second to really think about that, because this future is arriving a lot faster than we thought. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.